Hello, learners. My name is Anna. I am technical SEO specialist with background at marketing agency, and today I want to talk about difficult topic on how to do JavaScript audit. Why I call it difficult? Because there are so many resources that are too technical on this topic or too general about some basic stuff, and a lot of as a specialist they don't know where to start. So in this video I try to combine theory and practical experience on how to crawl the JavaScript website correctly, not to miss important errors, and what to do if you find some of them. Before we jump, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel below, because it motivates me to record new video, to produce content. Yeah, click the link below. So if you're already familiar with JavaScript, skip this part. I will try to explain how Google treats JavaScript. Actually, Google processes JavaScript in three main phases, which is crawling, rendering, and indexing. Let me show you the illustration on how it works. So Google create a crawl query of resources it discovered through external links, through Google Search Console submission, through internal links. All those addresses comes into one base. Then crawl actually analyze them, send it to the rendering tool, and only after that pages could be indexed and ranked. And unfortunately there are no clear answer on what stage the URL is, but clear tip is if you see this discovered currently not crawled or not indexed notification in Google Search Console, it's always a good practice to revise the page whether it contains enough relevant content if you want, of course, this page to rank, and to add some internal links and external links to this page, so as Googlebot in that way to crawl your page more quickly. I will link to the previous video when we discuss how to understand Google Search Console reports. It will be above. And we move on and talk about the best practices for JavaScript. And there are plenty of tips that could be used to optimize. I try to highlight the main one. So the first thing which is needed to say is that Google rendering is separate to indexing. Googlebot actually crawls the static HTML, and only after that it renders, like Google, right, or Bing or any other search engines. Then it renders, and only after that elements for JavaScript will be discovered. So if you want your relevant, important resources to be indexed, it's important to include JavaScript CSS media for indexation, so they would be opened for indexation, not closed with no index or robots.txt. Especially, it depends. Generally, for instance, Google Mappy APIs or with JavaScript, it's better to close because they weight your rendering budget. So it's better to close them. But if we talk about your internal JavaScript elements, which are important for user, for general understanding what site is about, they should be indexable. Google still requires SEO-friendly URL structure because it's easy for them to crawl it and to use it, as well as proper HTML anchor text with a href equal and in quotes the link with anchor, because it's easier for Googlebot to crawl links which are made in the old way. The other important note is that JavaScript events are not equal to user events. What does it mean? It means that Googlebot is not human. It doesn't click on your buttons, it doesn't hover on the page, scroll. That was the reason why I usually advise against totally infinite scroll pages for products listings or something, because Google just don't scroll and won't see this part of the content. And the Another one, last but not least, you should understand your site indexability, because if some of the resources are blocked, JavaScript will be just blocked on that stage and won't be proceed. So make sure that what you want to close is closed, and what you don't want, if you won't show the URLs, it should be opened. And it seems like an easy tip and too general, but believe me, I see so much elements when people care on what resources are blocked, but don't care about what resources aren't blocked. And it's always a good practice to double check what you show Googlebot and other search engines. I think the main question, which would be always beneficial to ask your developer teams or client, if your client works directly with a website, what is the site building? Does it use JavaScript framework, or have any client-side rendering dependencies for loading content? Because for you, as SEO specialist, as a digital marketer, it will take so much time to discover, and if some developer teams work already with the site, they should know the answer, which will ease the audit. Because despite the fact that Google make a huge step forward in JavaScript rendering, it's not still beneficial to use only client-side rendering, for instance. And if the site built just on client-side rendering, it might contain some bad examples on how the page are indexed. So get the answers, and crawl your site depends on what the answer you get. So in general, Google advised developing the progressive enhancement, building the site structure, navigation, only using rough HTML. In other words, I would just say that it's always beneficial to have skeleton, if to say so, skeleton with the most important content with links in rough HTML, and only some engagement, some additional elements built on JavaScript, but not in the other way. Okay, let's jump to particular steps on how to do the audit. I will show you an example on Screaming Frog, but there are a lot of solutions on the market which could do the same job. I just use the most popular one to show you how to do it easily. So by default in Screaming Frog, JavaScript rendering is not enabled because it requires a lot of resources, a lot of memory on your computer if you use your storage mode to save on your PC. Anyway, so to enable it, you should go to Configuration, Spider Rendering, and here you have a few options on which window size to use to render the element, some particular mobile device or desktop version. You could also go to configuration and then user agent to use Googlebot as a crawler. By default, Screaming Frog crawler will be used, but I advise to use Googlebot smartphone user agents because you probably heard about mobile first indexing protocol. A lot of websites firstly indexed by Google smartphones, so it's always a good practice to see the mobile version of your site. Then when your site will be crawled, you will see a lot of filters. If I'm not mistaken, 15 or 16 filters with the most common issues which could be found on the site. Let's briefly look through what could go wrong with JavaScript. So on my mind, one of the biggest, most common issue is pages with blocked resource, blocked by robots.txt resource, and in general, it's not a problem. It's notification for you to double check whether the pages should be resources, not pages, should be null indexed. As already mentioned, Google API, maybe some third parties, JavaScript elements, they could be blocked, robots.txt, just to manage crawl budget more efficiency. But then you should go manually and check them. Another one example of issue is JavaScript links. 8 pages that contain links that are only discovered in rendered HTML after JavaScript execution. And these links are not in the rough HTML, and Google is able to render page only if it's already rendered the page. So if it's important for you to insert no index or canonical tag or some special element, consider adding it to HTML also, and review which resources appears only after rendered HTML only. I decided to combine a few next issues because the principle of all their explanation are almost the same. So then you could see which tags are included in original or only in rendered HTML, because it's often happens when, for instance, developer want to remove no index tags and forgot to remove it from original for rough HTML, but remove only for JavaScript, and then it would help not help to index those URLs again. Canonical mismatch is also a common problem when in rendering JavaScript and in rough HTML, canonical tags are different. And the same could happen with page titles, meta descriptions, H1 headings, or signals which you send via JavaScript and HTML should be consistent. And all important information should be in rough HTML. The next slide shows you some sample on contains JavaScript content issue, where we could spot and could understand what is the difference in number of character words in rendering in rough HTML, and Excrement Frog made a really interesting and useful feature to show the word count change in both versions of the page, and then you could go further and then go to resources, to the rendered part of the HTML to view source, and click on show differences, see visible content or even HTML, and then see highlight these differences to understand which paragraphs, which abstracts are missing in rough HTML, and switch to HTML mode to see maybe some tags, maybe some important SEO elements are also missed, and then understand what to do next. That's basically it. I hope this presentation was insightful for you. If you still have some questions, write them below in comment section. I will be glad to answer if I know the answer. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.